The Frank Lloyd Wright School of Architecture allows students to learn by doing in two completely different environments. The summer campus is located in Spring Green, Wisconsin, while the winter campus is in Scottsdale, Arizona. These two locations offer a rich abundance of natural elements in two completely different environments. In 1886, his aunts founded the Hillside Home School in Wisconsin. Hillside was a place where learning by doing was a form of practice. In 1932, Mrs. Wright suggested that her husband start an apprentice system where talented young people from around the world could come to learn from Frank Lloyd Wright. Today, you can sense the essence of his life in the two complexes he built as educational communities. The legacy of Frank Lloyd Wright continues to live in the hearts and minds of the people who believed in his vision. Who best could tell the true story of the inspirational Frank Lloyd Wright than his admiring apprentices? This is his story, as told by those who knew him best. A story of how one man created a worthwhile legacy with such depth and meaning that his ideals are still successfully modeled today, continually inspiring new generations of creative architects.
In 1937, Mr. Wright purchased the land here in the desert where we started Taliesin West.
The word Taliesin is a Welsh word, and it was very typical of the Welsh immigrants who came to this country in the 19th century to give Welsh names to their environment, and it was a tradition to give a Welsh name to your home. And so he chose the word Taliesin, which if you literally translate that word, it means shining brow.
He never liked to build up on the top of a hill if you owned a hill. He'd tell his clients that if you do that, you've destroyed your hill. So he used to say, come down on the brow of the hill, which he did it there and he did here.
It was virgin territory, and after we were on the desert for a while, we got tents, and that, of course, was very comfortable. And I lived in a tent for over 4 years. I enjoyed it thoroughly. I think it's a wonderful experience. You feel so close to the land, so close to the desert. It's wonderful.
See, Frank Lloyd Wright had this idea that freedom, your idea of freedom, social and economic freedom, ought to give you a way of living that reflected the fact that you had greater freedom. And so he set about opening up the spaces within homes so that they were not a collection of boxes but that flowed together, and interpreted that as an expression of greater freedom of space, moving not only within, but from within outward.
Good buildings are bound to have a good effect on the people in them. But it's never going to be a widespread thing, you know. As I mentioned, there's always the minority which counts, which stands for quality. Because you look at the housing around here, you see. These are people who can afford beautiful homes on acreage. But the developer forbids to do that. He makes them confined to these little boxes, all of which are exactly the same. That's the degree of lack of privacy they have, being that close. But what's appalling to me is that they want that. They don't want to be different. And that's contrary to everything that we believe in. We believe what's called the sovereignty of the individual, Mr. Wright called it. Each individual is a sovereign himself. He's his own best person, his own best man.
I don't think we're going in the right direction right now. We are only 5% of the population of the world, and we're using about almost 70% of all the natural resources, energy. We seem to have a fixation on bigness more. The houses built today are twice the size that they were 50 years ago for half the number of people living in them. Our automobiles are bigger. We consume more energy. We're constantly consuming more energy and more natural resources, which has a consequence not only for our country but the whole world. If the entire world's population was to live at our level of a lifestyle, we would need 8 more planets right now to feed those people. So we're not going in the right direction. We should be miniaturizing and getting smaller and taking less, and living in more dense populations and letting nature, preserve nature, not just go out and bulldoze it away, which we're doing right now. In the Sonoran Desert, for instance, we're just tearing this desert up right now at the rate of 20 square miles a year. Low density, the marriage of the single-family house and the automobile, those two things, as long as we're accepting those as a part of our lifestyle, you're going to have sprawl. And we're just sprawling all over the landscape and just, destroying it. We're just, as I like to say, it's just crimes against nature, and that's what we're doing. We're committing crimes against nature. Architecture is probably at least a century behind the rest of the technological advance. You look how an automobile is made, the way it's fabricated by robotic systems, and the design of it, or any kind of airplane, boat, anything, is advanced way beyond how we're building houses. We're still building houses out of little sticks and pieces of stone or brick. And the shape and form of the house has not changed for over centuries. We're still building the same house we did 200 years ago. And we have to change that. We have to get it technologically advanced into the rest of the system so you can build things more economically, house people more efficiently, and so on, and maybe improve our transportation system. That's where we have a very weak transportation system here in the United States. In most of the West, where the population has been increasing for the last 50 years after World War II, the population has been moving to the sun, which is to the southwest. So now you have cities like Los Angeles, which was at the turn of the 19th century only 500,000 people, and now it's, Southern California is over 20 million people. There are more people living today in Southern California than there were number of people living in the entire United States when Mr. Wright was born. So you have cities like Los Angeles, Phoenix, which was not in the top 100 cities 50 years ago in population, Atlanta, Houston, Dallas, Las Vegas. The people are moving to the southwest, and they've been doing that for 50 years. The East Coast has been declining at the rate of 2% a year. Chicago has been declining. The Midwest has been declining about 0.8%. And so the population is moving to the southwest, where there's lots of land. And the automobile is the designing tool. We designed it around the automobile and not really about how we should, be more efficient.
In Texas, for example, where I was from, people would build these, what we used to call McMansions, the starter castles. And they would have windows on the west, huge windows on the west, giant rooms. But then what are you going to do with that space? You're going to heat it and cool it. Mostly you're going to cool it in Texas. So you look at those huge west expanses and the west sun that comes in the afternoon, and a lot of people have moved into those houses and then called me or called Texas Utilities in particular and said, I didn't know my utility bills were going to be $600 a month. What do I do now? And the truth is, there's nothing you do now. You just can't. You need to fix that in the design stage. So that is a horrible disservice to the people who buy and don't know that. We need to do better education of what people should be asking for in buildings. And it's sad that people have to learn by experience. They buy one of those and then they realize that it's not so satisfying to have a whole lot of waste space that you have to heat and cool.